all languages have structure. Whether dead or alive, spoken by few hundred peoples or millions of people, languages have structure. Even the sign language, British Sign Language, has a structure. So a language doesn't just consist of strings of words, but that the words group together to form phrases, clauses, and other groups of phrases and then sentences. Linguists describe this phrase within phrases pattern as hierarchical structure. We have looked at the hierarchical structure of the sentence, how word comes into the phrase into the clauses, and clauses into the sentences. One kind of hierarchical structure is seen in embedded sentences, a construction in which sentences occur within other sentences. Obviously, you are familiar with the idea of clauses, independent clause and dependent clause. So this is something like that. For example, Chris told Lee. This is independent clause. Kim couldn't swim. So there is one sentence embed in the main clause, Chris told Lee. The embed sentence is Kim couldn't swim. So this is what we generally find in language. We use it in writing, in speaking. So this property is known as recursion. Recursion means that enable us to have creativity. We can make an endless recursive sentence, right? With the help of conjunction or with the help of that, etc. Here the sentence in brackets, Kim couldn't swim, is the embedded sentence. It serves to tell what was that Chris told Lee. I wonder if Lee will arrive late. So what I wondered if Lee will arrive late. So the claim that she doesn't like Kim is very surprising. That we've no coffee left isn't my fault. We asked how to get to the station. So if you could look at the sentences, you find them in the beginning, in the middle, in the end. They are all embedded sentences. And there is no limit to this embedded sentences. There can be 1, 2, 3 and hundreds of embedded sentences. Kim couldn't swim. Lee thought that Kim couldn't swim. I said that Lee thought that Kim couldn't swim. So in this way, you can make an endless sentence. I charge up the battery. So if you look at this sentence, I charged up the battery, charge, and I charge up the street. If you look at this in B, we have just replaced street with battery. But are these two sentences alike? Obviously not. We'll have to look at the meaning of the word charge in the first sentence. It means to pass the current through some wires into the battery to make it more lasting or giving more time and service. Whereas charge in the second mean to move towards something aggressively and angrily, right? So taking their semantics, we can say that in structure they seem the same, only with the difference of two words, right? But meaning wise, structures wise, they have a lot of differences. And let's look at this. At first glance, these are said identical. Charge means something A, as I told you, is different in A and B. The only difference seems to be that the street is replaced with battery. And yet the syntactic behavior of the two sentences is entirely different. And always, as always, the asterisk indicate ungrammatical sentence. So the only difference seems to be that there is replacement of street with the battery, and yet they are two different sentences. For example, I charge the battery up, right? If we make it like this, I charge the street up, the first goes correct without any start asterisk, but the second is not correct. Why? It means that up is related not to the charge, whereas in the first it is up is related to the charge. It's a phrasal verb. Whereas in the second sentence, it's not a phrasal verb. It's not the structure of the phrasal verb. So we cannot move it so freely. However, it is the part of the phrase the street, up the street. And we can move this phrase very easily. Whereas the A sentence is concerned, we cannot take up the battery to the beginning, or we cannot move, because up relates to charge, not to battery. It was up the battery I charge. As I told you, it's incorrect. It was up the street I charge. It's quite easily found correct. So I charge up Lee's battery, and then again it's not correct, right? I charge up the battery. It makes 1 unit, so it's correct. I charge up the street, so it makes 1 unit. Up is in B sentence is related to street. So that's why we have to look at the structure, that what are the constituent of one phrase structure and other phrase structure. The same thing appearing identical may have a different function in different phrases. One may belong to any preceding element and other may belong to any following element. Charge is a phrasal verb, as I told you, so this is the same. In B, it is not, so it is with the street. There is a syntactic unit, up the street, which can be moved around. The sentence focuses, it was up the street I charged. So as a second demonstration of syntactic structure, let's take the possessive S, right? Like Lee's friend. You might assume that first this is possessive ending simply attached to a noun, a word that such as Lee and garment. For example, we have Lee and then possessive. So possessive as ending is attached to Lee, or if we say garment's dilemma, so possessive ending is attached to dilemma. But consider this sentence, I saw the woman next door's children, in which the apostrophe has taken in its possession not the noun door but the whole phrase the woman next doors. And similarly in sentence, what was the guy who retired last month's name? So the apostrophe is on the whole phrase. So we can say that apostrophe has taken into its possession the whole phrase, not to the noun or to the word. It is just after. When as linguists we try to figure out the syntactic structure of a language, we rely on the judgment of the native speakers to tell us whether a sentence is correct or incorrect, well-formed or ill-formed. These grammaticality judgments, along with the example that are collected from a spoken and written corpus of the language, form the data of the science of linguistics. So along with the data that we get from different sources, the native speakers' intuitive knowledge help us in determining what is correct in one language and what is incorrect in a language. It doesn't matter that native speakers usually can't tell us why they feel that a particular sentence is good or bad. They vary. The very fact that they have these intuitions show us the structural differences and similarities between sentences. So this is a very important point, that we sometime the native speaker telling us that this sentence is correct or this sentence is not correct cannot explain the sentence with the help of grammatical terminology, but even then their intuition guides them to tell what is correct and what is incorrect.